Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Casual Chats. I am Patricia, and I'm here with Aaron Menta.
Hey, everybody.
So, today we're going to be talking about the 1989 film Happily Ever After, produced by Filmation, the same company you may know of as the ones behind He-Man and the Masters of the Universe and She-Ra, the Princesses of Power.
Or if you live in the Philippines, it's also known as Snow White, The Adventure Continues.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so it's interesting because many years ago, I had on the show that long-haired creepy guy, Igoyama70, and Diva from Musical Hell. And we were talking about the Swan Princess movies. And I was mentioning about how in the 90s, when Disney was at its peak of popularity, there were a lot of companies that were trying to cash in on the popularity of Disney with all these princess movies. And yeah, this is one that I unfortunately watched when I was a kid. I actually had the VHS tape of this.
And by the way, anyone who wants to know my opinion of the Swan Princess, I think it's for the birds.
God. Yeah, go listen to our podcast from a long time ago where we talked about the Swan Princess films. And I know that since then, the final Swan Princess movies have been out already. And yeah, I'll have to get a hold of Creepy, Igoyama, and Diva to see if we can do those. But in the meanwhile, we're talking about Happily Ever After. Yeah, so it's actually interesting about how Happily Ever After came to be. So it was during the time in the 80s when Disney was starting to release their classic movies on VHS for the first time. This was around the time in which when, we had the reigns of Michael Eisner and Jeffrey Katzenberg coming into the picture for the first time. And Michael Eisner was focusing on the brand, where he wanted to emphasize more of the Disney classics because, it was at the time in which Disney wasn't doing very well. So yeah, I mean, you had Pinocchio releasing on VHS, which was the very first one of the classics, and Filmation decided to counteract with this with Pinocchio and the Emperor of the Night, and they got sued really, really badly.
Yeah, and it's at the point where, unfortunately, that Filmation, I think, you could definitely tell with the Happily Ever After production that they really were losing steam at this point,
yeah.
And, I think they just rode this giant wave after He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, and then I think they just realized, oh wow, we are at the point where we can't really up our game, but at the same time we can't afford to not up our game. They've just really hit this kind of this really awful purgatory, I think, that they found themselves in. And so unfortunately, I think within that massive identity crisis I think that they had, I think at that point about being a small studio that ended up with a big hit, unfortunately it's now we can do whatever we want. But this movie unfortunately is a big massive lesson of you can't just go off and do whatever you want, and because one, you're going to anger a lot of people, and two, you are going to end up with not a studio anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so this is this movie.
Yeah, this is this movie. This is the movie that killed Filmation. This is the movie that destroyed an entire company. A company that has been around since the 50s and was pretty much decimated around the late 80s. So yeah, the fact that this movie was in production hell for several years, and the fact that when this movie was about to come out in the Philippines around 1989, and then the movie didn't come out into the US until 1993, and that was a major box office bomb, partially because Disney released Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs on the same weekend, and they did it on purpose, by the way, because once again, they were sued saying that you copied off Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs from us. And so, yeah, they knew about this production for a long time, and they had to do some massive changes. Instead of we're going to have the Seven Dwarfs coming back, we're going to introduce the Seven Dwarvelles, who are the cousins of the Seven Dwarves. And they had to, do a lot of massive changes of the story. That way they didn't get sued, but they ended up being sued anyway, and the movie ended up being a bomb anyway. So yeah, I mean, it came out when Disney was at its high horse. I mean, 1993, this was around when Aladdin came out, and this was a year before The Lion King came out. So yeah, I mean, about where Disney was at that point. They were the top line of animated films, while Filmation at that point was pretty much just completely shut down. And yeah, this was their swan song, Happily Ever After.
So Patricia, you grew up with this movie and I didn't. This is sort of like the reverse of the next topic that we're going to be introducing. So why don't you give us your thoughts on what you thought of this movie when you were growing up?
Okay, so yeah, when I grew up with this movie, I used to see it all the time. This was a movie that I would have it on rotation alongside with the other Disney classics, and The Swan Princess, which I did talk about, and another one that we talked talked about in Crystal Skull, Princess and the Goblin. Yeah, so my sister and I were just really into the princess phase at the time because it was just like the perfect opportunity for a lot of people to like tell all these classic stories for a new audience. And yeah, I mean, we got into it. We had all the princess movies, all the Disney princess movies, like as we mentioned before, like, you know, we loved Little Mermaid, we loved Beauty and the Beast, and we loved all of the other Disney classics, and also the fact that we even owned some of the classics that you know, were that even came out even before we were born. Like we had Pinocchio, we had all the other Disney movies, and in the fact we had Sleeping Beauty, and yeah, we had all of these movies that we would just have on rotation over and over again. And
I think we all had those types of movies, didn't we? Like I grew up with like the Transformers VHS tapes, and obviously I grew up with like various other things that either my parents or my grandparents or various other people would just like purchase, and they would end up in our VHS collection. We would just watch them on rotation non-stop. So
yeah,
like
exactly.
that was us back in the day. Like, it's not just like today where you can just like get yourself a subscription and then all of a sudden go through a load of stuff on algorithm, and you be constantly filled up with this content. Like you had to we grew up on physical media, and it's not DVDs, by the way. This was like VHS tapes where you had to watch them and then you had to rewind them and then you had to watch them again. You know what I mean? Like it was like
in order for you to know about what the coolest animated films were, we didn't have the internet where we can just like look up online what everybody else was talking about, or we didn't have influencers who would go over and do live streams or reactions to movies and TV shows saying go watch this. No, we had basically word of mouth from kids in school, or a commercial that would be popping up on TV from time to time, or we go over to the video store, and if the cover looks really, really cool, then you would say to your mom or your dad saying, I want this, can we please rent it for the weekend? And
like unless you like it was like with video games, unless you had like a subscription to a magazine where you could see which ones were the best games, which one were the worst games, or if you like you had like a radio or TV Times magazines, or you had like movie review magazines, or you had like subscriptions to some obscure newsletter, you don't know what you're going to get yourself into.
No.
So back at the home rental store, you could end up walking away with a gem, or you could end up walking away with like a piece of crap. And so happily ever after, what does that come under?
Piece of crap.
Okay, here we go. Oh my goodness. So here we go.
Yeah, so we open up with a narration of the Magic Mirror, who's voiced by Dom DeLuise.
We all know the story of a maid named Snow White, and of how the good dwarves tried to hide her from sight. And who can forget how that wicked queen, the creep, gave Snow White the apple to cause eternal sleep.
That caught me by surprise, by the way. Like, here's the thing about this. With things like this, you don't know what voice you're going to end up with. And then when it's kind of like you hear something that just kind of like feels like, oh, wow, I've heard this before, and it just feels so obscure. And then you look it up, it's like, oh, wow, Don DeLuise, he did this voice? Oh, good grief.
Yeah. So I'm sure a lot of people already know who Dom DeLuise was, but for those who don't, he was a major actor, and he even did a lot of voiceover work around the 80s. Like, he was in so many Don Bluth films. He was in Secret of NIMH, American Tail. He was in A Troll in Central Park. He did, various other, voices that you probably heard around, from the 80s all the way up until the 2000s. So, yeah, I mean, he was like a major character actor that, seemed to be playing like a very lovable character that seems to be, alongside with the main character. And in this one, he is the Magic Mirror who does a lot of rhyming, and he's telling the story of what happened in Snow White. Like you didn't already know.
By the way, like, this must have been a prototype to the Katzenberg approach, because, like, also in this movie, it's not just, Irene Cara. Like, Malcolm McDowell's in this movie, Phyllis Diller's in this movie, like, obviously Don DeLuise we've already mentioned. Like, there's various, legend, I guess you can say legendary voice actors and also actors and actresses in this movie as well.
Yeah.
Like, you can sort of see where all the money went.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, yeah, it is definitely like playing into
Tracy Ullman's in this movie.
Yeah, from Tracy Ullman, from the Tracy Ullman show. And yeah, I mean, Carol
And
Channing.
also Ed Asner as well, like, as we all know, who is, from Up as well, like, he's in this movie. Like,
Yeah.
it's just, good grief. Like, the bill at the end of this movie must have been eye-watering on the voice acting alone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, especially with Irene Cara. I guess we can, talk about her really quick. Yeah, you may know her. She was the singer for, What a Feeling from the Flashdance movie that had gotten her Grammy Award. And she plays Snow White in this.
You get someone like Irene Cara, who is a Grammy Award-winning artist, and, you think that she's going to sing in this movie, right?
No.
Right?
Yeah, no,
Right?
she doesn't sing.
Yeah, like, I can't believe that this is what we're up. So, you get an actress who is a Grammy Award-winning artist. And by the way, some of the, even the princesses that have, been gone by in the Disney Renaissance era are not Grammy-winning, or, they are, purely actresses. You get someone who can actually sing.
Yeah.
And you give her a princess role in, going towards the Disney Renaissance. And, you don't give her a song number. But, the freaking owl does. It's just, you give the song numbers to all the wrong people in this movie. It's crazy.
Yeah, the only song that she does sing is toward, the beginning and the end, and it's the same song anyway. But, yeah, I mean, she sings it as Irene Cara, but she doesn't have a song as Snow White, which is crazy because in the Disney movie, Snow White does sing. She sings several songs, actually. And you would think that, if they are trying to cash in on the Disney craze, then, yeah, they would have had Snow White sing a song.
I don't know, maybe you should have demanded money for it. I don't know. I just think it's just crazy to think that, here's the situation. You can see why this movie failed. All the other, Disney princess movies or even a princess movie knew exactly what to do with the princess that was in the middle of their animated film. And they didn't take that situation and make something out of it. I just think it's mind-boggling. Why on earth would they do that?
Well, another thing that Disney does with their music that this movie clearly didn't do was the reason on why they have them sing. Now, again, we talked about this several times before, but for those who don't know, Disney would like to add music in not just for the sake of adding music, but also it's for exposition and for plot progression.
Exactly.
Yeah, so when you hear Ariel singing Part of Your World, it's supposed to emphasize the fact that she wants to go into the surface because she finds it really fascinating. When you hear Belle singing, the intro song, like Little Town, she is introducing the town that she's living in and the fact that she is an outcast. And we see all the other townspeople singing because of, just introducing us to this world as well as introducing us to the character. That is why that's important. And yeah, I mean, there's several other, princesses that have song numbers. I mean, Snow White, again, going into it, where she's singing I'm Wishing over by the wishing well because she wants to wish for a better life that is not involving with her being a servant to the queen, her stepmother. Or Someday My Prince Will Come, where she dreams about, meeting up with the prince for the first time. And she sings it over to the dwarves. And we know about what she wants. She wants the prince so that she can live happily ever after. And yeah, the songs that are in this movie do not do that whatsoever.
I mean, I sort of understand, now that I look at it, I kind of understand why she doesn't sing, because, there's very little story to kind of get into here, really. It's sort of kind of like, Snow White and the prince, are having their happily ever after, and then this, evil doer called Lord Maliss, who's played by Malcolm McDowell, comes and finds out his sister is dead, who is the evil queen, and has decided that he's going to take murderous revenge on, both the prince and Snow White.
Yeah.
So he captures the prince. So, if anything, we're now sort of kind of like doing, a Donkey Kong Country 2, I guess you could say, by kidnapping Donkey Kong and having, Diddy and Dixie come rescue him. I guess we're doing the same thing here. So we're having Lord Maliss capture the prince, and now, Snow White and these, Dwarfettes now have to go rescue him.
Yeah, the Dwarvelles.
Dwarvelles.
Yeah, so, I mean, yeah.
I'm going to end up calling them the Dwarfettes just because of the Chipettes from Alvin and the Chipmunks.
Yeah, so let's introduce our Dwarfelle characters, shall we? So we have Muddy, who's kind of like our Doc in this character, in the case, in which, she's the leader of the Dwarfelles. Dwarvelles, and she is the one who's in charge of the earth, and she's basically constantly giving herself a bath in the mud puddle. And then we have Sunburn, who's the grumpy of this situation, where she's like the one who can control sunlight, and she's like really angry. And then we have...
she's a hothead.
Yeah, in more ways than one.
Yeah.
And then we have Critterina, who controls all the animals of the forest. And then we have...
And she looks like a chipmunk.
She does actually look like one of the Chipettes, actually.
Yeah, actually, yeah. Like, I immediately thought this. I was like, at least they took this from Alvin and the Chipmunks.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, she kind of looks like, I don't know, Brittany, or Eleanor, or, something like that. It's like, yeah, let's just take, like, the featurettes. It's like, oh, we can make her, like, an animal, like, Dwarvelle.
Out, here she comes.
Okay. Yeah, and the next one we have is Blossom, who, she's in charge of all
not Blossom from the Powerpuff Girls, unfortunately.
No.
Because that would have made it cool.
Yeah, but no, Blossom is the one who grows all the plants and flowers in the world, and she's voiced by Zsa Zsa Gabor. And it's funny enough because her sister, Ava Gabor, has been in several Disney movies. She was in The Aristocats, where she plays as Duchess, and she was in both The Rescuers and Rescuers Down Under as Miss Bianca. So it's like, yeah, I mean, I guess... Ava was able to perform these characters in these classic Disney movies. Let's see if we can give Zsa Zsa this opportunity.
Yeah, she really got stuck with the slop, hasn't she? Good grief.
God. Okay, Moonbeam, who is essentially sleepy, where, she is just sleeping and sleepwalking all the time. She doesn't really get that much of a character development. And then we have Marina, not to be confused with Marina from Stingray, where she's in charge of, all the creatures and all the plants from underwater. And then we have, let's see, who else? Oh, yeah, Thunderella, who's essentially the little one who can't control her powers, where she can be able to create thunderstorms.
Yeah, just this. But unfortunately, they have basically just recreated the Seven Dwarfs.
Yeah,
That's all they've done.
Yeah, they recreated the Seven Dwarves, except one made them women and two gave them elemental powers, which you'd think it would be really cool because they got these powers from Mother Nature, and, they're working...
I wonder if they combine them all, they can summon Captain Planet.
Oh, God. I would have preferred that, actually. Maybe he would have defeated Lord Maliss.
Let our powers combine! Oh, good grief.
Anyway.
So we then get Mother Nature, who is played by Phyllis Diller.
Yeah.
And she just basically plays Phyllis Diller in this. Like, there's no, any characteristics that kind of, stick out from Phyllis Diller, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean,
she just plays herself.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, at least when she was casted in other animated roles, like when she was the Queen from A Bug's Life, or when she played as Grandpa's sister from Hey Arnold, or when she played as Jimmy's grandma from Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius. At least she, had a character.
But she added something to the character.
Exactly.
And, I think the thing with Phyllis Diller is that Craig Bartlett, to his credit, when he was playing Grandpa's sister, is that he gave Phyllis Diller some good direction of what this character is going to be. So Phyllis had at least something to work with. I think in this situation, I mean, she was just screw it, I'll just play myself.
Yeah.
It's just, oh, I'm Mother Nature, here I am. It sounds to me like she wasn't really given too much to go with in all of this, and sadly we can't really ask her because she passed away. But but you can tell in Jimmy Neutron, and you can tell in Hey Arnold that she had massive direction with her character and was able to put her own spin on it, and she was able to give life to these characters that she played on the Nickelodeon show. But in this, she basically she has nothing to go on. She just basically ends up being Phyllis Diller in this.
Yeah,
she ends up going back to her radio days.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, she's another character who has a song number, and again, the song number is just her creating...
But again, why would you give Phyllis Diller a song number, but you don't give the Grammy Award-winning, voice actress one? Again, what are you doing?
Anyway, but yeah, the whole song is just basically her creating these animals, and you're gonna have to throw in puns because funny. And it just drags. It really just drags.
All the song numbers drag in this. And,
the worst song number is definitely the first one.
Oh yeah, the owl. It's I'm bad. That's all it is. It's like it must have bad dudes that video game is are you a bad enough dude to capture Snow White?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. So
and he has a cigar, so of course he's bad because somehow he ends up going to Cuba to go get some Cuban cigars, like in the fantasy world. What? Like it's just I don't know what I don't know what's this movie's trying to do anymore.
Yeah. So essentially, Scowl and Batso, his companion, who's a bat because bat.
Yeah.
They
He's
worked.
no Bartok the Magnificent by any stretch of the imagination.
No, he's not even close. Anyway, so yeah, they were some of the animal companions for the evil Wicked Queen. And then when Lord Maliss comes in and says, I'm going to take over everything, Scowl wants to prove to Lord Maliss that he's bad. And so, he and Batso go over to the wood so that they can be able to help him capture Snow White. And yeah, it just ends in a fail.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they're just comical villains at the end of the day. And then on top of that, Lord Maliss ends up trying to kill him anyway. So, I don't know. Would you have missed him if he ended up getting boiled to death? I thought it was cruel, but I should tell you what, compared to the villain we were talking about in the next episode, of this, Lord Maliss is a lot better than, the next one we're going to talk about.
He actually has a motivation, number one.
Well, yeah, you killed my sister. I'm going to get revenge on you. Great. You've got something to work with here.
And number two, he actually has cool powers. Like, he can turn into a dragon, and he has laser vision, and he can disguise himself. He has a cloak that can be able to...
he shoots lasers from his eyes. He doesn't actually have, a laser vision player, so,
Well, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And he also has a...
he likes Laserdisc.
That's his preferred form of...
yeah.
Yeah, VHS are so passe. It's all about the laser discs.
Exactly, yeah.
And he has a cape that can...
It's disco vision, isn't it? I'm thinking about, not laser vision. Well, I don't know why I thought about all that all of a sudden.
Anyway, and he also has a cape that can turn anything into stone.
Yeah.
So, at least he actually is a pretty threatening villain. But unfortunately, he does play into the typical Saturday morning cartoon route, in which is
just for a giggle, the Happily Ever After was released on Laserdisc.
Well, there you go.
So anyway, that joke's said its course, but unfortunately, the story in this is so basic. It's just like a revenge story, if anything. Snow White and the Prince are trying to have the happily ever after. The villain is out for revenge because they killed the Queen. And but actually, if you really think about it, if they're basing this on the being a sequel to the Disney movie or the movie itself, really it was the dwarves that sort of kind of killed the evil queen in a way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the dwarves.
Why aren't you getting back on the dwarves?
Oh, the dwarves are not in this movie. That's why.
Exactly. Yeah, and but they're mentioned in passing. That's
they're mentioning in passing, saying we're going to invite the dwarves over to the wedding, or they don't live in this part.
Not anymore. No, they moved on to another mine in the kingdom or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And so we're going to have us the dwarves.
By the way, they make a bit of a mess of this because in the story, regardless of which story it is, in Snow White, the mine is not next door to the house. It's enough away so that the evil queen can go and poison the Snow White with the apple.
Yeah.
And then they go right back and they discover it. It's not it's just next door. In this movie, it is apparently, which makes no sense.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. So it's annoying, you go through this movie and it just doesn't right foot whatsoever, the only cool thing I guess you could say is, probably but mind you, Lord Maliss is pretty much is a standard villain in this, if anything, he's just, one, cruelty away, I think, from, being a Saturday morning cartoon villain at this point.
Yeah, pretty much.
Exactly, yeah.
Another character that we forgot to mention is the Shadow Man.
Oh, the Shadow Man, not Orko.
No, not Orko, no, because he has legs.
And by the way, spoilers, he's the prince who's been turned into this monstrous character.
Yeah,
so,
exactly. Yeah, so he that's the
they actually did play the mystery up pretty well on that. What's his deal? I really thought he was going to be oh, hey, he's he's just this guy who happens to live in the area that Lord Maliss is in, and so he has motivations to get rid of this guy because he just wants to live in peace. I thought they were going to do that, but no, he's the prince.
Yeah.
All right then.
Yeah, that's the whole thing is that the fact that Lord Maliss actually cursed the prince into turning him into Orko with legs, and you have him go throughout the entire movie saving Snow White and the Dwarvelles from danger, and they're just wondering wondering, it's like, does he work for Lord Maliss? Who is this guy? Like, what's his deal? And yeah, I mean, it does come into a plot twist where it was the prince all along. So,
yeah. By the way, Lord Maliss is the thing of punishment. Apparently, he's turning people into stone.
yes.
Yeah, so, like, again, it just feels like, well, we've seen villains kind of do this before, so, like, there's nothing really, interesting here. Really, like, he has this evil blanket that he throws over things and they all turn to stone.
Yeah, well, his first attempt was actually to send his wolves to chase after Snow White and the Dwarvelles, but that doesn't work.
Yeah.
And then finally he...
I thought he sent the wolves to, like, capture them again, and so he can basically do, like, the punishment.
Pretty much.
I thought that was what was going on here. By the way, those wolves, good grief, could you make them any more sinister? They're like fangs growing out of their fangs, and like they had horns, and like it's just like I feel kind of sorry for them. How do they eat? Like just like it's almost like they seriously need like a dentist. Like just it's they're just like how more unnecessarily menacing could you make them?
Yeah, and also no pupils either, because no pupils means that they're evil.
Yeah, and they're blind as well, apparently. They're blind sharp wolves. They could have played it into that, really. Like, hey, they can smell and they can hear us, but they can't see us, so, like,
that would have been interesting,
That would have been interesting. They should have done something with that.
Yeah, but they didn't.
No, they didn't, because this movie is not smart.
Yeah, I mean, when you introduce the Dwarvelles alongside with Snow White over to the, to the realm of doom, I mean, they don't really do much of anything, actually. I mean, most of them are pretty useless. Like, yeah, you have Sunburn lighting up the cave that they're walking into, and then you have, Thunderella helping defeat Lord Maliss while Snow White puts the cloak on top of him, but everybody else is pretty much useless.
Yeah, like, the one thing I'll say at one point, like, when the dwarf... What are the
Dwarvelles.
The Dwarvelles. I seriously, you're gonna have to help me because I keep calling the Dwarvettes throughout all of this. So the Dwarvelles. Thank you, Patricia.
You're welcome.
Is when they get this, I tell you what, that actually was pretty like, oh wow, oops, like are they dead? Like, so I mean, to be fair, they played that bit up very well because they make it look like if you get turned to stone in this world, you are dead. You are like that is the end of you.
Yeah.
And so it was pretty cool when like they managed to do the bit where it's like, oh wow, like this is serious. Like at least they played up the seriousness of that situation. That was really good. And when Thunderella came to the rescue, that was like that was a good way to write redemption in this because they made it look so useless in this and they made it feel so small in all this, and she's literally small. And so I would say the way that they did Thunderella's like story arc in all of this, I think that's one of the positives I think of this movie.
Yeah,
but not by much.
It's actually funny because you would think that this movie was going to be a major focus on like Snow White and maybe Lord Maliss to emphasize more of it, but no, it actually has a major side story with Thunderella where she's the smallest of the Dwarvelles and she's the one who cannot control her powers, and she always gets her powers taken away by Mother Nature because she can't really do anything about it. And even Mother Nature saying that they just use their powers just to do whatever and they don't use it to help out the world, and so they were being threatened to have their powers taken away. And so Snow White says, I want them to come with me to the realm of doom, and that way we can be able to save the prince. And she gives him one more chance. And when you get to see Thunderella saying like, oh, she can't do anything right, she's not as brave, she's not as strong as the other ones. I mean, she's also another character who also gets a song in this.
Yeah. So,
and by the way, the song is God. Like, it's like you listen to this song and you can immediately know when this song was released. I mean, it definitely sounds like an 80s ballad.
Well, that you got to forgive because, that was the style at the time.
Yeah, that's true, but at the same time, you can't excuse it for the Disney songs that came out in the past where, a lot of the songs that came out like decades before have a timelessness to them. Like,
well, they do because they have nostalgia factors to them as well, like, I think, and also the fact that they actually are good songs.
Yes.
That's the thing, because you were talking about before, what goes into a great Disney song? It's not just about, the music and, like, the person who's singing it. It's like, what is this song doing? Like, a whole new world, for example, like, the fact that Aladdin is introducing Jasmine to, like, this whole other place that she's never seen before, and, in Beauty and the Beast as well, like, the story of, like, these two coming
I'm glad you brought that up, because
Yeah.
I was going to say something about that. So,
Angela Lansbury does a really good do the thing of that song, by the way.
Oh yeah! Again, thank you for bringing that up, because I was going to say something about that. In an interview, around the Beauty and the Beast's anniversary, she was talking about how originally Beauty and the Beast, like that song that she sung, was going to be a '90s rock, like an '80s rock ballet. Like, it was going to be like a lot more rock and a lot more
rock
loud.
ballad.
Yeah, it was
Good
going to be it was going to be a rock ballad. Like that, and then
Ozzy Osbourne comes and bites the head off a pigeon or something like that.
Yeah, it was supposed to be a rock ballad, and Angela Lansbury says, I can't do that, and, let's make the song a little bit more romantic, let's make it a little bit more loving.
Well, if you remember, like, when they did the, the music release for Beauty and the Beast, they actually did a version of that. Actually, that's in the credits, actually, the rock ballad for.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, like, there was... Which always makes sense because, it's better that in the movie itself, I mean, like, that was going to be a timeless song that they did. And by the way, this was something that they were going to continue on doing, throughout that, like, all the way up to Frozen. Like, Let It Go, Let It Go being a rock ballad would have been terrible, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Like, the fact that they had it just, within, the Disney style that we know, and it made it, like, it made it to the point where, like, it was, being sung by every single kid, across, for probably a decade.
Yeah, well, the point
probably
is,
still now.
Yeah, the point is that what would have immediately dated the movie with this 80s rock ballad, putting into like the main song that's supposed to be the moment where Belle and the Beast fall in love, it was a much more softer, it was a much more romantic and a much more timeless song that people still remember to this very day. But then when you have Thunderella's song where she's singing about that she wants to be great and she wants to be just as successful with her powers as the Dwarvelles, it feels so dated. Like, you can definitely tell when this came out, and it doesn't have a timelessness and a re-listenability that all the other Disney songs had. Again, going into what make Disney songs so great is not only because of what, the meaning of the songs that are being placed in the movie are, but also the composition. Like, the fact that these songs and Happily Ever After do not have the same, listenability compared to Disney songs of its era. It just goes to show you that, for some people who, criticize Disney for adding songs into it, I mean, you have to give them a lot of credit that they're able to make good songs. Yeah. Because this is a prime example of somebody who's trying to copy off of Disney and doing it wrong.
Exactly, yeah. But unfortunately, what Filmation have done here is like just 100% wrong, pretty much. Like, there's some bits where, there are some glimmers of hope, but then, like, I mean, I'm talking about in the music in regards to this. Like, in regards to everything else that they do in the movie, there is actually something there that it looks like they could do some good ideas with, but then it's just, they just start, like, making a complete mess of it all. And I think it's because they were so afraid. Obviously, there was we're actually going to talk about the Disney lawsuit yet, have we?
The Disney
speaking
lawsuit.
of Jeffrey Katzenberg.
Oh, yeah. Like, when they knew that they were doing the production of this movie, once again, very similar to what they did for when Pinocchio and the Emperor of the Night was coming out on theaters in VHS. And that was coming out roughly around the same time that they were releasing Pinocchio on VHS for the first time. They sued Filmation to death, to the point in which they lost big time.
Well, it was more of the fact that they forced them to say, look, you can't put this to Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs whatsoever, so you're gonna have to make these changes. You cannot link it to our movie. Like, they were so protective of it, and they probably should have seen this coming, because they've always been, Disney have always been so protective of their property since the day of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Like, was to the point where, like, the actress who played Snow White did not, like, do anything else ever again. Like, I mean, I'm really surprised they never saw this coming, but, it happened.
Yeah, it happened.
So it's the reason why we ended up with the Dwarvelles, and it's the reason why we ended up with, like, all the changes that we had, because they just couldn't do this again.
No, they couldn't.
No.
And they ended up doing it anyway, and it cost them big time.
Exactly, and so... and unfortunately, what you think they'd be like, oh, well, don't worry, it'll come through. This will be, the movie that will be talked about for ages. Well, it is a movie that's been talked about, but not for the good reasons.
No, not really. I mean, everybody who's seen this movie pretty much criticizes it for the same reason we're criticizing it. For being a complete Disney ripoff and not doing anywhere near as good as what the Disney classics have done.
Exactly, and, it's so sad to think that this was the studio that gave us, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe and She-Ra Princess of Power.
And Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids.
Yeah, exactly. They had so many classics under their belt, and then they went up and did this mess, and they pretty much just sunk the ship.
Yeah.
It's just this. I tell you one song they should probably put this in, which was maybe 10 years ahead of its time. Celine Dion's "And My Heart Will Go On." Yeah, okay, we're going to score this thing now.
Yeah, sure, why not?
Okay, so, here's the thing about this. The way it's executed is poor. The story is standard. At least the villain is somewhat cool in some way. And the Thunderella arc, I think is one of the strong points of the movie. The music is not there. The animation just is not really doesn't really, push any further the boundaries that, even Cosgrove Hall with, the BFG movie that they did, a couple of years before this, I think was probably pushing more ground than, whatever this was doing. So, sadly, it's just weighed down so much. I mean, for me, it's going to be, I'd probably say 3 out of 10.
Yeah.
I think at this point.
All right, yeah. I'll probably, I would say 3 out of 10, too, because, there's very few things that you can really go back to this movie. I mean, sure, you have... Lord Maliss is a pretty decent villain, but then, he's pretty one-note because all he just wants to do is get revenge on the death of his sister. And then you have Thunderella, who also has a really interesting arc, but, she's not a major character in the whole line of this. So it's why focus on her when you could focus on, I don't know, Snow White or Lord Maliss, characters that actually matter. The side characters like Scowl and Batso, I mean, they're just whatever. It's Scowl wants to be bad and he wants to prove it to Lord Maliss and he completely fails every single time. And Batso is just the nice little bat who doesn't want to be bad, but he's just along for the ride because reasons. And, the Dwarvelles, I mean, they're just basically the Seven Dwarves, but with none of the personality and none of the charm that made the Snow White and the Seven Dwarves made them so lovable. So, yeah, the music is also not very great either. And, the animation is just pretty standard. So, it just boils down to just not a very good movie whatsoever. And I feel ashamed to saying that I actually grew up with this movie a lot when I was younger.
Well, I think I'm going to manage to make you feel better, Patricia, because in the next episode, we're going to talk about a movie that I grew up with.
And that I never seen before.
Yeah, so now the shoe's going to be on the other foot.
Yeah, to conclude our long look back on animated movies that we grew up with as kids and aren't as good as we remember it, Aaron is going to be talking about a movie that he grew up with, which is the 1992 film Blinky Bill the Mischievous Koala. All right, until then, everyone, take care.